What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. All right, so before I get into this video, because I think I forgot to shout him out in my last video, shout out to the brother Zach Hankins for the donation to the channel. Once again, showing love via the Cash App. Salute to you, brother, for showing love. Salute to you for having great video ideas. And in this particular video, this was a video request, one of my Patreon subscribers. He wanted me to do a video, just an opinion on what would have happened if Michael Jordan never existed in the 1990s. How would things have progressed, or how things would have fallen in place? I don't want to ever wish someone out of existence, so I guess I'll just alter it by saying Michael Jordan just never played basketball. And I've done variations of this topic before. I think I've done it 2 or 3 different times. So let's just say Michael Jordan becomes the greatest, I don't know, gas station attendant of all time, or the greatest florist ever, or the greatest doctor. I don't know, whatever. So look, that's a huge void missing in the NBA, right? A huge void missing in the 1980s and 1990s. So, and like I said before, I'll say this in all my videos. This is just an opinion. What I'm saying is not the gospel. People can have different opinions and have different outcomes as far as how they look at things. But I guess the Chicago Bulls franchise remains a mediocre one without Michael Jordan being drafted, unless there's some player of equal stature that gets drafted, but presuming that in the real world there never was. So I guess Chicago stays the same. But let's look at this for a second, though, because if Michael Jordan is never drafted, then things change in a lot of ways. Does Scottie Pippen still get drafted by the Bulls? Perhaps not. Perhaps the draft goes in different ways. After the '84 draft, they draft someone else. I mean, there's so many different things you got to look at. So many different things you got to look at as far as how the NBA plays out. Scottie Pippen's career will be different. Perhaps John Stockton gets drafted by a different team. So it's a lot of different things you got to look at in this situation, because if the Bulls don't draft Michael Jordan, the 3rd pick, then who was the 4th pick in that draft? Was it Charles Barkley? I can't remember who the 4th pick was. But you can make the presumption that whoever the 4th pick is, they get drafted by Chicago. Matter of fact, let me remind myself about that draft. Let me see if I can look that up right quick. Give me 1 second. Maybe, let's see. So Sam Perkins. Okay. So Akeem Olajuwon was number 1, Bowie was number 2, Jordan number 3, Sam Perkins number 4. So does Chicago draft Sam Perkins? I don't know. Then Charles Barkley, Melvin Turpin, Alvin Robertson. So anyway, no matter how you look at it, the players that came after Michael Jordan, save for Charles Barkley, I forgot exactly where he was in that draft. Well, I just said his name. So I think Barkley was 5th. Save for Barkley, they weren't really franchise-altering players. They were good players, but not the type that you could build a championship around. So Chicago, whatever route they take, unless it's Barkley, they remain a mediocre franchise, right? But let's just say, for the sake of argument, that everything stays the same pretty much, except Michael Jordan doesn't get drafted, right? Let's just go with that premise. And everything else stays the same, which is hard to say because they wouldn't stay the same because Michael Jordan isn't there. I will say this. Man. With no Chicago Bulls, do you think you make the assumption that Magic and Isaiah have one last finals battle in 91? And if that's the case, who wins? I mean, you could argue that if the Pistons were healthier, maybe they would edge out the Lakers. Then again, maybe, I don't know. I don't know how to really gauge that finals very well. The Pistons, they were defending NBA champions. The Lakers were a different team, but I think the Lakers would have been capable of beating the Detroit Pistons. And I think their series would have been a lot more competitive. So maybe Magic ekes out another championship, gets number 6. Or maybe Isaiah gets a third title. You know, who knows? I don't think Larry Bird would have won more titles. I think with the inevitable injury issues he had, the rise of other teams in the Eastern Conference, I think he stays pretty much where he is. I think where the difference lies is more in the 90s. In particular, let's say in the Eastern Conference, for instance, does Ewing win more championships? Because as we know, in 92, the Bulls beat the Knicks in 7 games in the semifinals. Now, that was the semifinals, but if the Chicago Bulls weren't there, you got to believe that the Knicks would get a couple more victories in the regular season. And I have a feeling that that Knicks team would have beaten the Cavaliers in the conference finals, right? Now, I think that Knicks team could have beaten Portland in the NBA Finals. And then Ewing gets a championship in 1992. So that's one situation where Michael Jordan doesn't get a title. Another situation where you could argue that Ewing could have got another title. I know it's a big what if. And I've done a video on this before, and it's not related to this video's topic, but if the Knicks didn't have the suspensions that they had against the Miami Heat in 97, I think the Knicks win that series. And that Knicks team, I thought, could have possibly beaten the Bulls in the conference finals in 1997. It definitely would have been a more competitive conference finals. But I think the biggest beneficiaries of Jordan not playing would be Karl Malone and Charles Barkley. I'm pretty sure that the Phoenix Suns would have beaten the Knicks in 1993. I think they were just too deep. I think they would have beaten. Think about it. Michael Jordan had to put on a superhuman effort to beat that team, or to help the Bulls beat that team. And I think that Barkley probably gets a title. I think the biggest beneficiary would have been Karl Malone, as far as his legacy is concerned. I think in 97, if they played the Miami Heat, I think they smoked the Heat. I think they smoked them in 5 or 6 games. In 98, with that Pacers team, which up until this year, I think that's the best Pacers team I had seen up until this year, even better than the 2000 team that went to the finals. That finals would have been epic. Utah would have had home court advantage. I think they won 62 games that year. I think the Pacers won 58 games that year. I think that Utah could have eked out a title, win on Game 7 at home at the Delta Center. So that would have been 2 championships, but possibly if Michael Jordan didn't exist in the NBA. Not just that, but when you look at scoring titles, 5 times Karl Malone was runner-up to Michael Jordan in scoring titles. So he would have won 5 scoring titles. Dominique Wilkins, I think, was runner-up in scoring, 3 times, I think, to Michael Jordan. So he gets more scoring titles. Like I said, unless there's some other guy who fills the void, which in this situation there is none. I don't think that we would have had another dominant player like Michael Jordan in that time period. But the legacies of other players would have been higher. With no Michael Jordan, Akeem Olajuwon is higher. With no Michael Jordan, Charles Barkley is higher. With no Michael Jordan, Karl Malone is much higher. Karl Malone is potentially a top 5 all-time player without Michael Jordan. Reggie Miller, if the 98 Pacers want to win the title, he's a champion, okay? He's looked upon differently. Instead of being a top 75 player, maybe he's more of a top 30 player, okay? So a lot of these guys' legacies are incredibly enhanced with no Michael Jordan. Scottie Pippen, I think Scottie Pippen was the biggest beneficiary of playing with Michael Jordan. So in essence, without Michael Jordan, I don't know if Scottie Pippen's the same guy. I've said this before and I'll say it again. I think without Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen becomes a pumped up version of Stacey Augmon with a better offensive skill set. I think he becomes something like that. I don't think, because there's some people say, well, without Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen would have scored more. I don't think so. We didn't see that in 1994. With no Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen went from averaging 21 points to 22 points. So if he was going to put up a lot of points, he could have did it in 94. He didn't do that. He could have did it in 95. He didn't do that. Scottie Pippen did not have the offensive skill set to go out there and drop 25, 30 points a game. It wasn't in his skill set to do that. He did not have the shooting ability, in my opinion. He did not have the arsenal in his offense to go out there and consistently carry the Bulls offensively every night. But he did do a lot of things well. But, I don't think Scottie Pippen is the same guy without Michael Jordan. Horace Grant, without Michael Jordan, is Draymond Green without Steph Curry. Well, that's an insult to Horace Grant because he's a better player than Draymond Green. But you get where I'm going with that. I think basically Horace Grant will be looked upon like Harvey Grant. You know what I'm saying? Like he's a good player, and that's about it. Scottie Pippen will be a really, really good player, but kind of these marginal, non-Hall of Fame type guys without Michael Jordan. And that's just how I feel. Phil Jackson without Michael Jordan is not the same caliber coach. A good coach, possibly even a Hall of Fame coach, but not the potential GOAT without Michael Jordan. Okay? Jerry Krause is not looked upon, at least in the 90s, at least in that time period, as a genius GM. Although retroactively now, post 98, he's looked upon as, a pretender. But not a pretender, but overrated in that aspect. But yeah, I think the biggest beneficiary would probably be Karl Malone. Olajuwon too would be rated higher. I don't know though if Olajuwon would have won more titles, because I think Olajuwon won in the best window of opportunity that he had. Because in 93, Jordan's not playing in the Western Conference. So I think it's the same, but Olajuwon is looked upon higher because you don't have the argument of, oh, well, he only won those titles because Michael Jordan was out of the basketball. You know what I'm saying? So without that shadow overcasting his championships, he's looked upon even higher. And you can also have an argument about the Cavaliers. Do the Cavaliers go on to be at least a contending team in the 90s without Chicago in the way? If there's a mediocre Chicago Bulls team, because we all know that the ascendancy of the Bulls also coexisted with the slow descent of the Cavaliers. Without the Bulls, do the Cavs become a championship caliber team? Do they draw in more free agents? Even though it's Cleveland, if they're starting to win and actually make an NBA final appearance or so pre-LeBron. So these are some things you got to look at. But that's how I basically look at the situation. And that just goes to show you how many great players Michael Jordan kept from winning titles. Anyway, that's all I got to say about it. What you guys think?